Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension. Self.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Hello, hello, hello. You're listening to a podcast not only of sound but also of mind. It's Time to Rewind is a podcast that takes a journey into a wondrous land of time loops whose boundaries are that of imagination. I'm your host Bubbawheat, and each episode my guests and I explore these time loops one loop at a time. This stop is Trapped in the Twilight Zone, and this is the 11th stop at 2020's Season 2, Episode 9, Try, starting at 26 minutes and 48 seconds with Mark saying Phil, and ending at 26 minutes and 50 seconds with Mark stumbling over Thompson. Here with me once again is my guest, Niall McGowan from Batminute. How are you doing today?
I'm trying to match Mark's baffled energy in this particular. Now we're down to what, 2 seconds?
Yes, this is.
I just wonder does he have the same energy the whole date this time, or he's just like I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Like, oh, she didn't. I messed up on Phil Thompson.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I can't. I've lost my mojo. This isn't working. This isn't working. I've got to power through it.
Yeah.
To the end of the day.
Is a guy who's got like no recovery. He's like, you can make up for one joke not landing. Like, no, they all have to land, every one of them.
Yeah, and I did want to talk just a little bit about the structure of this montage because, like we mentioned, the first one started at 8 seconds, and then it went down to 4, and then 3, and then 2. And the first one had the whole morning montage to it, and the second one didn't have that. It just had, it just went into like showing the mask, and then the third one just started with him saying the name and then the look shared between them. And then this one it's just like starts off right at him. He says the name, stumbles on the last one, and just has this like little look of defeat.
Mm.
And I just think it's amazing that in 2 seconds they're able to tell this complete story about what's going through in his head, where he like he stumbles over Thompson. He's like, Phil Thompson, and then he just like looks away, and just that look of utter defeat, just in 2 seconds, just tells you everything that you need to know based on what we've seen throughout this entire montage. It's like he's just completely failed, and he just like knows that's it. I'm done.
Yeah. You know, I was wondering, is he like pre-planning these names, or is this like on the day he's just like, I'll try Bill Thompson today, or does he have a list where he's just like crosses them out every time? I suppose he can't even do that because the list itself wouldn't last from day to day. So, like, you wonder if he's in the back having to make a mental list of like, okay, try Phil Thompson, try Phil Johnson, and then maybe he had like, the Phil, the way he stumbles over it, so like in the back of his head he had one already preloaded, and then he's like, oh no, I said that one, or he stumbles over it because it's like it's already been previously attempted.
Well, actually, I think it's the opposite because, this is the third time we've heard he's used Thompson as a last name.
I think he's fully dependent on the Thompson will work. That's it. It's Thompson. That's the funniest last name.
I've got $1,000 invested in this Thompson guy. I need to name drop him.
Well, maybe he was briefly thinking of doing something like he was going to give them a really elaborate last name, like Phil Philandelinger or something like that. But then he was just like Phil Thompson. Like don't stray away from the formula. The formula is sound, even though it's not worked at all at this point.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man, you got to keep your head in the game. You got to stick to the script. Stick to the script. That's how you get through this.
I did look in briefly there to, cause I was thinking like, yeah, why did you go for like funnier names or something? Managed to find a list of some of the weirdest baby names that have been registered in recent years.
In recent years, there is one that you mentioned that at first I thought it was going to be on the list, but if it's recent years, it wasn't, because this was like a famous story. But these parents named their child Tallulah Does the Hula. And their child actually, got a court order whenever they were around like 5 or 6 years old in order to legally change their name to something more normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as they should have done too. It's like you're like saddling someone. I suppose that you could always be like, the name's just Tallulah, but then I don't know if legally or something, like in school when they're calling out the roll call, they have to say the name fully the entire time or whatever. But because the major ones major ones recently though, with like Grimes and Elon Musk's kid was it XAEAXXI or whatever. It's like I know the kid's gonna grow up in a bubble because it's their parents is like the richest guy in the world and stuff, or was previously. But still, like don't do that. The kid hasn't done anything to you. You don't have to condemn them to a life of having that saddled on them constantly.
Well, and also Frank Zappa's kids, Dweezil and Moon Unit.
Yeah.
And Penn Jillette's daughter, Moxie Crime Fighter.
Yeah, but even you have David Bowie's kid, was it Zoe Bowie? But then he just changed his name to Duncan Jones, like that when he became a director, because it's like Zoe Bowie. And he's like, I'm done with it. I'm through with that name. Because that is always the perpetual debate though with, is it Bowie or Bowie? So then it would be Zoe Bowie or something like that. Oh, it goes back and forth and over. But no, in Sweden they had someone recently was the parents recently attempted to name their kid what they pronounced as Albin, but spelt it was BRFXXCCXXMNPCCCCCLLL, bunch of numbers. Like it was a long list of, as if someone dropped a cup onto the keyboard when they were writing it, kind of thing. And then apparently the Swedish laws were changed, so they're like, you can't do that. That's absolutely fundamentally ridiculous. And there's other little ones, like there was a couple who the mother wanted to name the kid Hazel, but the father was a member of the Hells Angels, and he was dead set on something like that, so they called her Helzel, because it's like Hazel but with Hells Angels mixed in at the same time. Because you got other big celebrity names. You had Nick Cage's kid is Kal-El, because he's obviously massive Superman fan. And so he's now condemned his son to be called Kal-El the rest of his life. And even Jason Lee, from freaking Mallrats, infamous
Logan Lee Muse.
Yeah. Apparently he has a son called Pilot Inspector, which was named after a song by the band Granddaddy called He's Simple, He's Dumb, He's the Pilot. And it's like, but dude, your name's just Jason. Like no one's gonna pick on you for that. But Pilot Inspector, they will. Like, what are you doing to the kid? And so it goes on. But within the UK, there's a lot of ones like Nutella, Author, things like this, where people just really going into RoboCop. Apparently, was submitted as a name recently.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know different countries, they have stricter. Some of them have stricter regulations, where I think that there's at least some countries where they only have a list of approved names, and you have to pick a name from that list.
Yeah. I'm all for, naming your kid something unique. But when it gets into, one of these is, audio silent. It actually was Shannon Sossaman from, Rules of Attraction and A Knight's Tale.
Yeah.
Apparently her son is called Audio Science.
Huh.
And it's just but when it gets to that, it's it's more, you're setting the kid up to be picked on, is the thing. It's all well and good to be like, oh, it's so unique. I appreciate that. That's a great idea. But it's, naming your son RoboCop is like, no, like you're victimizing them then. Like it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I know. I've got a newborn in the house right now as well. And
it's not called RoboCop.
no, not RoboCop. But we did have, a long discussion because we wanted a name that was unique, but not so unique that it's bizarre. And
we
went with is we went with Faye Guinevere.
Oh, that's nice. That's a nice name. There you go. That actually works out really well.
So it's uncommon, but it's not like so far out there that it's bizarre.
Yeah. No, it's very memorable as well. Like, we'll stick with people, but again, it's like, it's not going to be like, it's not bringing up mental images of a baby that says like, give me milk or there will be trouble.
You have 60 seconds to comply, or I start screaming.
Well, even like within this episode, I mean, like it's Christopher Grace, but instead of going Chris, he goes by Topher, which is he's the only person I know who does that, and that's great. Fair enough, man. You've actually taken the thing and done a spin on it to make it unique and distinctive to yourself. So, although maybe it's just an American thing. Like I've never heard that before done with anybody else, but I don't know if you ever have over there. But I remember too. And like in Buffy, it was Alexander, but he just went by Xander. And I was like, oh, well, there you go. You can mix these things around without having, to turn around and be like, my name is Tallulah does the hula. Like as a whole name then. Or number 16 bus shelter, which was another one from New Zealand, apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting people that, you never know if it's just because they want their 15 minutes of fame, or if they just, they have their own ideas and they want their child to be the unique snowflake that's with a name that nobody else has.
Yeah. It's just, you just have to make sure you keep it to a reasonable level, because it's not about you as a thing. It's the kid that has to live with it. So
yeah, it's,
if you take anything away from, a boy named Sue, like there's the whole point of that song is that like, at the end it was like, I knew what I was doing when I named you Sue, because it was going to make you tough and all, what you name your kid is going to affect them their entire lives and stuff.
Yeah, the one thing I always remember about that song was whenever I was a kid, I always heard it and they actually censored it. So it was like, you're the who named me Sue. And in my head, I always thought that it was like, you're the something extreme. And then I finally, as an adult, heard the uncensored version. And it's like, you're the son of a bitch that called me Sue. And it's like, that's it?
Yeah.
They censored that?
Yeah. Some of the radio censors are very strange. Like this one's I've been convinced like, oh, that song they bleeped something there. You fill it in what it is. And then you hear the uncut version and you're like, you have to censor that. What the hell's the matter with you? But
yeah, I think a big one was that I always remember was Kid Rock's Cowboy, where they censored so much of that. But then like years later they would play the song on radio completely uncensored, and I'd be like, wait, why are they not censoring that line?
Yeah. The one that sort of pops to mind instantly is the remember that song a couple of years ago, Fancy by Iggy Azalea, that had Charlie XCX she did the chorus. And at one point there was like a breakdown. And it was always like, one of the lines was like, let's get beep on the minibar. And I was like, it must be like, let's get, I don't have to make you beep anything. But it's like, I assumed it was like, let's get fucked on the minibar. And then I heard it uncut. I was like, it's let's get drunk on the minibar. And I guess they're on radio. I was like, that's promoting alcoholism. So you can't have that out there. Whereas in my head, by bleeping it, you made it way worse than it actually was.
But, getting back to the today's loop, I just have, my couple quick notes.
So much to cover.
Yeah.
All 2 seconds of today's loop.
Yeah, so, back to my, wardrobe notes. He's back to his full outfit. He's got the the flannel, the jacket, and the glasses. And then as far as famous Phil Thompsons, there's Philip Bernard Thompson with a P, and he's an English retired footballer who played as a defender for the Liverpool team of the 70s and 80s. And he also represented the English national football team on 42 occasions and captained England on 6 occasions.
That's where I'm broadcasting from currently, is Liverpool. So there you go.
Yeah, and another one is a gospel singer and songwriter from Boston, Massachusetts. And this is also Phil Thompson with a P. And he was a member of a popular urban contemporary gospel group, Ashmont Hill, before embarking on a successful solo career with the release of his debut album, My Worship, in 2018.
Oh.
So those are the two most famous Phil Thompsons, according to Google. But yeah, we just got 2 seconds, so there's not much. I think we've covered all we can cover about that part of the montage. So that brings me to the next classic Twilight Zone episode, and this one is The Lateness of the Hour. And this one I just kind of picked because I kind of remembered the title, and like I knew it had something to do with robots. And the first thing that I noticed when watching this, it's like, this does not look like a Twilight Zone episode at all. And I looked into it, and apparently they, most of the Twilight Zone was shot on film, and then they recorded 6 episodes on videotape in order to save money. And this was the first episode that was shot on videotape. And it really changes the look of the show. It makes it look way cheaper. You just don't have the clarity, and it just looks weird and looks wrong. But
I wouldn't even have thought, like, back in the late 50s you would shoot things on videotape. That's like, I thought that would be like years later.
But in terms of the actual episode, this is, we have an elderly couple that has, a staff of servants that are all automatons. And then they have a daughter as well, like a young adult daughter. And she is basically rebelling against this. Like, she just wants to go out and have fun, and she thinks that they're relying too much on these automaton servants that do everything for them. And then the twist of the episode is you find out that the daughter is a robot herself. And she doesn't know that she's a robot until she figures it out. She's like, why aren't there any baby pictures of me? And she just kind of just goes off across the entire episode. And then at the very end, they're like, well, what do we do? And they end up basically rewriting her memory, and they make her into the next maid. So she's a maid, they change her name, they change her background, but she's still physically there.
Yeah. That's dark.
Yeah.
It is a dark ending. Again, though, it weirdly ties into, thematically with even this episode, though, in that, clearly that's a character you would, watching the daughter throughout that episode, you grow to care about her and see her as a fully fleshed out being, whereas the parents, by their different perception, is like, this is just a machine. We can just wipe its memory and do whatever we want with it, because that's what you do with machinery. And it's the same kind of thing of Mark's mentality towards her this whole episode, where it's just like, look, I see reality differently from you due to my scenario, even though you yourself are you think that you're this fleshed out entire entity. You're not to me. My universe, you won't exist, after today. You'll go back to being a new version of you, that kind of thing. So it does kind of tie in. It's a thing that the Twilight Zone had come back to, a couple of times. But yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed that I love about this, and I also noticed it in a different episode that I watched, is how they pronounce robot.
I think I actually had by habit sometimes I do say robot just for the fun of it. I'll be in showing off a robot mask to a girl at a museum, and I'll be like, what about this robot? Like, oh, it didn't work. Time loop. Robot.
All right, but I think that covers it with this 2-second loop, and then we get a slightly meatier one for the next episode. But thanks again for joining me, and why don't you go ahead and remind everybody where they can find you online?
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm Niall from Batminute, and you can hear me talking about each minute of all the Batman movies from 1989 onwards over on the show Batminute, currently called Batminute and Robin, because that is the season we're in. And yeah, it's all available on all good podcatchers, and on Facebook, just under the Batminute Listeners Cave is a discussion group, and we're on Twitter and Instagram as well.
As always, I'm Bubbawheat, and you can find me at flightstitesandmovienights.com. You can find me on Twitter at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm, as well as anywhere else where you listen to podcasts. We also have our own Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, where you can join and discuss episodes as well as other time loop movies and TV shows. And until next time, I will still be here, trapped in the Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted
Light.
for your approval.
Another dimension. Light.
for your
Shadow. Another dimension. Light. Shadow. Another dimension. Self. Light. Shadow. Another Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Phil Thompson.